Thank you for that. To remember, if we could go back, wouldn't it be awesome if we could go back to what it was like before we allowed sin to enter into the world? And one day that is coming. When Jesus Christ does come back, we will go back to the way it's supposed to be, a relationship between us and God, and solely that, without the influence of sin. And I can't wait until that does happen. That's going to be an amazing time, and that will be the rest of eternity. If you don't know Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, there's a lot more than just getting saved. It comes with all of that. So consider that. If you don't know Him as your personal Savior, today is the day of salvation, and He does love you, and He does want that for you. If you have your Bibles this morning, if you'll turn to 2 Kings chapter 5. This morning I want to preach on the point of no return. And this message has been on my heart because the truth is we've got to get to this point as Christians. This is a place where we need to be, and I will explain this as we go. But the point of no return, if we can't get there, if we're not there, then we're not living that Christian life like we're supposed to be. So in that case, that should be something that we are all interested in finding out. Am I there or am I not there? Because if I'm not there, I want to be there because I want to live that Christian life like I'm supposed to be living it. I want to get back to where I'm supposed to be with Christ. So in 2 Kings chapter 5, we've got a story, and I've preached on the first half of this story before, but I've never gone to the second half of this story. It's the story of Naaman. Naaman was a Syrian commander, and he's ended up with leprosy. And he has an Israelite slave girl in his family, and she tells him about the prophet Elisha, who lives in Israel, who might be able to heal him of this leprosy that he has. So Naaman goes to Elisha, and Elisha tells Naaman to do something unusual. He says, what you need to do is go down to the Jordan River, and you need to dip yourself into the Jordan River 7 times. And if you'll do this, you will come back up out of that river after the 7th time, and you'll be healed of your leprosy. It will be cured. It will all be gone. By the way, dipping into a river 7 times is not the cure for leprosy. If you ever get leprosy, that's not it. So go to the doctor. That's not the cure. But Elisha says this is the cure. Go down to the Jordan River, dip in it 7 times, and when you come up that 7th time, you're going to be cured of your leprosy. And this is where I'd like to jump into the story and on Naaman's response. That's where I want to come in here. So look at 2 Kings chapter 5 in verse 11. It says, "But Naaman became furious and went away and said, 'Indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and heal the leprosy. Are not the Abana or the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?' So he turned and went away in rage." Naaman is the commander of the Syrian army. He's pretty high in ranks. And he goes to Elisha, and Elisha says, this is how it's going to work. Go down to the Jordan River, which is a filthy, filthy river, and dip yourself into that river 7 times. And when you come up that 7th time, don't worry, the leprosy is going to be gone. So Naaman, when he hears this, he's pretty mad. The Jordan River is disgusting. And he says, aren't there other rivers that I could go down to and wash myself? There's cleaner rivers. Why didn't he tell me to go to a cleaner river? See, Naaman's upset that Elisha has the audacity to tell a man of such high esteem as himself to go down and do a humbling act, such a humbling act as bathing in the dirty waters of the Jordan. Do you not know who I am? I'm the commander of the Syrian army, and you want me to do this? You could have picked a clean river. No, you said the Jordan River. So he leaves mad. But then one of his own servants steps in and preaches a mini sermon to him. Don't you love those friends that when you're in the wrong, those friends that come up and preach the mini sermons, don't you love those people? And the truth is, you do love those people. You're glad they're in your life, but none of us want to hear a mini sermon when we're in the wrong. We don't like that. So if somebody comes up to you and says, hey, by the way, you're wrong, this is the right way to do it, you're mad at them, not because they said something wrong, because they said something right. I want to be mad. I want to be upset right now. And you preach this mini sermon to me, and a lot of times it just doesn't feel good. Well, it doesn't feel good to Naaman either, but he does have one of those friends. Look at verse 13. And his servant came near and spoke to him and said, My father, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? He makes a really good point here. If Elisha would have asked you to conquer an enemy or to give him independent wealth, would you have done something like that? Yeah, that wouldn't have been a problem at all. But he didn't ask you to do something great. He asked you to take your prideful and arrogant self and take it down to the Jordan River and wash yourself in that river and be clean. That's all he asked. Just go do the simple thing. Go take a bath. That's all he asked you to do. And you know how to do that. Just go get clean. And what the servant says makes a lot of sense to Naaman. Like, yeah, I hate mini sermons, but it's good for you. And it makes a lot of sense. So Elisha asked him to do one of the easiest tasks there are. Go take a bath. Just go down to the river and take a bath. But the Jordan River was where the less fortunate people would wash. That's where the less fortunate people would get their water. Naaman was not that. He was better than those people. He was the commander of the Syrian army. But what his servant said made a lot of sense, so he did go and he obeyed. Naaman decides, well, I've got leprosy. I got to get my mind back on what's the real problem here. I've got leprosy, so it's worth a shot. Look at verse 14. So he went down and dipped 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Now there wasn't anything healing about the waters of the Jordan River. There's nothing healing about those waters. And there wasn't anything magical about the number 7. He just says, I want you to go dip yourself 7 times into the Jordan River. The miracle actually had nothing to do with the water at all. You can go to the Jordan River today. There is nothing magical happening there. It's just a river of water, same as it was then. There's nothing amazing about that water. The miracle happened when a man who saw himself as better than everyone else went from the one giving the orders to the one obeying the orders. Everything changed when his heart changed. He went from the highest ranking position to one of the lowest ranking positions. Naaman's story is an encouraging story. But God tagged another story onto the back of it to help us see the entire picture of what's going on. This is the story I want to talk about. This is the story I want to go into. You see, Elisha has a servant also, and his name is Gehazi. This guy is pretty impressive. This guy, a lot of times we stop at the end of Naaman's story. Well, we stop at this point in Naaman's story, but his story goes a little farther. Gehazi is not a commander of an army. He doesn't hold a highly esteemed position. He's a servant of the prophet of God. He's the bottom of the totem pole. He's not even the servant of God. He's the servant of the servant of God. You know, he's pretty low. And when Naaman sees that he's healed of his leprosy, he wants to thank Elisha in some way for what he's done for him. Remember, Naaman had a death sentence. There was no cure for leprosy at that time. He knows he's going to die, and he has a life given to him. So he wants to say thank you to Elisha in some way. Look at verse 15. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his aides, and came and stood before him. And he said, Indeed, now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Now therefore, please take a gift from your servant. Naaman is now referring to himself as the servant of Elisha. He put himself in Gehazi's rank right there. I am your servant. Just like Gehazi is your servant, I am your servant. Naaman says, please take a gift from your servant. So you see that high-ranking official that Naaman was at the beginning of the story has now humbled himself to coming up to Elisha and say, would you please take a gift from your servant? Naaman's gone a long way from this rank down to this rank. He's no longer the man who was too good to wash in the water. He returns as a humble man. And he says, please take a gift from your servant. Elisha has saved Naaman's life, and Naaman wants to show gratitude in some way. I want to say thank you to you. Would you please accept a gift from me? But there's only one problem. Elisha wants to make sure that God receives all the glory and not himself. He wants to make sure that God gets the credit for everything that just happened. So he wants to glorify God in all this. So he says, no, I don't want a gift. I don't want anybody to say that I did this so I could receive something. So no, I don't want it. Look at verse 16. But he said, as the Lord lives, before whom I stand, I will receive nothing. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. This act of kindness and this miracle were provided by God, and Elisha wants God to get all the credit for everything that's been done. God's going to get all the glory. God's going to get, if you want to do something in return to say thank you for what's been done, do it for him, because he's the one that did it. I'm just the one that told you about it. But if anybody's going to get a return on that investment, it's going to be him. It's not going to be me. Elisha could have been rich. Naaman had a lot of money. Naaman had a lot going on. He could have been rich, but he turned it down. Now, while all this is happening, Elisha's servant Gehazi is losing his mind. Remember where Gehazi stands in all of this. He's the servant of the servant. He's the low-ranking guy. So he can hear Naaman saying, I want to give you a gift. What can I give you? And Gehazi's thinking, yes, something's coming our way, and life is going to get better because this really rich guy is about to dump his wealth on us. This is excellent. And then he hears Elisha say, we don't need anything. And Gehazi's thinking, yes, we need it. We need something. I'm the servant of the servant. We need something here. But Elisha says, no, we don't need anything. Gehazi's existing at servant status, and Elisha just passed up the opportunity to provide him and his family with a better life. Man, we could have had more. We could have done so much better than we're doing right now if he would have just taken the gift. And now Naaman's about to leave, and the lifestyle promotion is going to leave with him. So Gehazi decides to make a move. I've got to do something. Look at verse 19. And then he said to him, go in peace. So he departed from him a short distance. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, look, my master has spared Naaman this Syrian, while not receiving from his hand what he brought. But as the Lord lives, I will run after him and take something from him. Elisha, you don't want a gift. Elisha, you might not want anything in return for Naaman's healing. But hey, the guy just offered us free stuff. Somebody should take advantage of the offer. It's free. It's been offered to us. So he wants to go check out the benefits. And he finally has a chance to trade his servant status for Naaman's status. Remember, servant of the servant is in a high position. It's really low. Naaman is about to dump some of his wealth on them, which will raise his status in society, and he wants that. I'd like to change my status for his status. I want to go from servant of the servant to the guy who doesn't have to worry about all this stuff anymore. I want my status to go up too. He can now be something. He can have something. He can finally move up because of this offer. So look at verse 21. So Gehazi pursued Naaman. When Naaman saw him running after him, he got down from the chariot to meet him and said, is all well? And he said, all is well. My master has sent me, saying, indeed, just now 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the mountains of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. Gehazi just created a story which does fit the character of Elisha. This is a smart excuse or a smart reason to run after Naaman. He says that 2 young men, sons of different prophets, have just shown up, and Elisha would like the gifts that you offered to us to be given to them to take care of them. See, Elisha's still not, he didn't change what Elisha said, I don't want anything. No, he created a story that Elisha still doesn't get anything, but Elisha now has the good heart to take care of other people with that gift. It's brilliant. So Gehazi comes up with this scheme, and he runs after him and says, yeah, this is what Elisha wants. And remember, Naaman is extremely grateful for the gift that he just got, his life back. He's very happy, and he doesn't even question whether or not the story is true. He is more than happy to help. Absolutely, absolutely, I'll give you this, and I'll help with this situation. I want to do that because I'm thankful for what God's done for me. Look at verse 23. So Naaman said, please take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, and 2 changes of garments, and handed them to 2 of his servants. And they carried them on ahead of him. When he came to the citadel, he took them from their hand, and stored them away in the house. Then he let the men go, and they departed. Naaman not only gives Gehazi the gifts, he sends 2 of his servants to carry the gifts for him. Yes, I'll give you the gifts. Hey, you 2 come over here and carry these for him so he doesn't have to carry them. Naaman is really appreciative of what God's done for him. So when they reach the town citadel, or the tower in the town, Gehazi says, hey, I'll take it from here, guys. I'll carry him, and you go back to Naaman. So Gehazi gets the gifts, and the servants go back to Naaman, and now he's got them, and it says, and he hid them in the house. Two men in this story have lives that have completely changed. Naaman is now healed of his leprosy, and Gehazi is a very rich man. It's all playing out well for everybody in the scenario. Gehazi's rich, Naaman's healed, and if we stop the story right there, everybody lives happily ever after. But God doesn't stop stories with happily ever after. He stopped them at what we need to hear. So the story continues to go on. See, there's one last step that needs to be made to complete the transformation. Naaman has become humbled through everything that he's been through. He's a very humble man. Remember, he came in and said, would you please receive a gift from your servant? Naaman has taken his status from a commander of the Syrian army and has brought himself down to Gehazi's level. I am your servant. Gehazi's envious of how good Naaman actually has it. So he wants to trade his status for Naaman's status. Remember, Naaman's already changed his status down to where Gehazi is. So Gehazi says, hey, there's an opening. You've lost your position. I'd like to go up to it. Look at verse 25. Now he went in and stood before his master, speaking of Gehazi here. Elisha said to him, where did you go, Gehazi? And he said, your servant did not go anywhere. Then he said to him, did not my heart go with you when the man turned back from his chariot to meet you? Is it time to receive money and to receive clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male and female servants? When Gehazi finally gets to see Elisha, Elisha says, I know everything. Because God allowed my heart to go with you when you did this, and I got to see it all. Why does God seem to be everywhere? Why can't we just get away with something? God is all-knowing. He's all-powerful. He is everywhere. You can make up a joke and tell God He's already heard it. God is everywhere. He's all-knowing. And Gehazi realizes right here, I might have been able to get out of Elisha's sight, but I couldn't get out of God's. And God told Elisha exactly what happened here. He asked him if he thought this was actually the time to indulge himself with greed. Is this really the time to go for money? Is this really the time? A lost man has just experienced the one true God, and you decide to use it to satisfy your own selfish desires? Is this really what you should have done, Gehazi? This should have been one of the most unselfish scenes that Naaman had ever seen in his entire life. But Gehazi, you used it to change your own life status. Naaman should have seen us behaving like people of God. But instead, you took this and used it for your own advantage so you could change your status. So Elisha informs him of how much he actually did change his status. You wanted to change your status? And that's exactly what you did, Gehazi. Look at verse 27. Therefore the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and your descendants forever, and he went out from his presence leprous, as white as snow. Gehazi wanted everything that Naaman had, but what he didn't consider was everything that Naaman had. He didn't think about what it would cost him to change positions with Naaman. You want what Naaman had? Now you've got what Naaman had. He doesn't even say, take the gifts back. No. You took the gifts. But what came with the gifts is the complete status that Naaman had before he changed his status to yours. So now you change positions. You got everything you wanted, Gehazi, but you also get everything he had, and that includes the leprosy. Yes, Naaman was wealthy and had prestige, but he also had a problem which was going to separate him from everybody he loved. His leprosy creates a distance between him and the people that he loves, because you got to get away from those people, otherwise they'll catch leprosy too. And all the money in the world can't fix that problem. He had separation, he had loss, he was discouraged, he was in despair. Yes, he's rich. Yes, he's got prestige, but he's dying and he's losing everything. And Gehazi wasn't focused on Naaman's problem. He was focused on his own. And he saw Naaman's scenario as the solution to his scenario. If I could just be like him, if I could just have what he has, everything would be better. So Elisha gives Gehazi everything that Naaman had. Naaman traded his pride for humility and got healing all the way around. All the way around. Gehazi traded his humble situation for a more prosperous situation, and he received loss and separation. Throughout Naaman's story, the heart of both men changed. Naaman developed a servant's heart. Gehazi developed an entitled heart. But two men's heart changed in the story. One man brought himself low and became better, and the other man exalted himself and became worse. Trying to exalt yourself will only leave you needing more. Please hear me out here. Trying to exalt yourself will always leave you with needing more. There's always something else to bring you to a higher level. You'll always need something more than what you have. But humbling yourself and developing a servant's heart will always leave you with needing less. Always. Don't you need all this stuff? No, I don't need any of that stuff. What's the difference between the guy with the servant's heart and the guy with the entitled heart? This guy always needs more, and this guy's always got what he needs. That's an amazing thing, because a person with a servant's heart doesn't always have a lot, but they always have a lot to give. They have more to give than the guy with everything, because they've got a servant's heart. Trying to exalt yourself will always leave you needing more, but a servant's heart will always leave you needing less. You don't need all that. Look at 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 6. It says, "Therefore humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time." You want to be exalted? That's how to do it. The way up is that direction. Humble yourself and he will lift you up. He exalts the humble. God does not exalt the proud, because the proud are exalting themselves. He always exalts the humble. One thing I find myself constantly praying for is the spiritual growth of everybody in this church. Always. I find myself praying for that all throughout the week. And I'll bring you up by name. Not because God forgot about you, but it keeps you fresh in my mind all the time. I pray for your spiritual growth. I want that. I pray for my spiritual growth. I want the spiritual growth of our church to constantly be going up. And I do pray for you, because that is, with all my heart, that's what I want. I want to know that we're growing stronger in our relationship with Christ. So today I've decided to speak on a vital ingredient to help make that happen. I really do want to see that happen, and I want to offer this ingredient. one of the most necessary things for spiritual growth is a servant's heart. You've got to have a servant's heart to continue to grow spiritually. It's important. It's vital. And I want to take you to one more story to prove that it's true out of the Bible. In Luke chapter 15, we have the story of the prodigal son. And a lot of us are familiar with that story. A young man, an immature boy. You guys know the story, and I'll just kind of recap here. This young immature boy demands that his father give him his inheritance immediately. I know you're not dead yet, Dad, but I want everything I have coming. I want your livelihood. The part that I get, I want you to give it to me. And the father agrees to let him have it early. And this young guy goes off and he spends his entire inheritance on temporary pleasures. And he wastes everything. And after some time, he begins to realize that with the status he received, because of the wealth, because of all that he had, he also received emptiness and suffering. Everybody was my friend when I had the money. But when I lost my status, I lost my friends. And now I'm sitting here empty. And he begins to see how good things were before he received his wealth. So he repents of his pride and he returns back to his father's house. And when he arrives, his father hugs his neck, and he commands that a celebration be made in the honor of his son that just came home. It's time to celebrate. My son is home. I want to celebrate, and I don't want to spare any expense. Let's really celebrate the fact that my son is home. But I want you to see the heart of this boy as he's deciding to return home. Look at the heart of the prodigal son before he goes home. Luke 15 and verse 18. I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. Boy, things have changed in this kid's life. He left entitled. I want everything that I want, and I demand that you give it to me. And he left with all of it. And he comes back, and his heart is completely changed. I am no longer worthy to be called one of your sons. Make me like one of your hired servants. God has finally brought him to the point of having a servant's heart. He's happy just to serve. Even if I can't be considered family anymore, even if I can't be considered one of your sons anymore, can I serve you? Because I appreciate you for who you are now. I see it clearly. And even if I can just be in servant status, I'm okay with that. But there's another son in the story. The son that we don't talk about a whole lot. He's never left, and he has continued to serve his father all the way through. He has been faithful. He has served his dad the entire time. But when he finds out that his irresponsible little brother has come home, and there's a party being thrown in his honor, he doesn't take that very well. Like, are you serious? You know, the sibling rivalry. Finds out that his little irresponsible brother who went out and wasted everything has now come home, and there is a huge party being thrown. Look at verse 25. Luke 15 and verse 25. It says, now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and because he has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf. But he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. You would have thought that he would have been happy that his brother was now safe at home again. But instead, he's so mad that he won't even go in the house. I'm not even going in there. So the dad has to come out to talk to his older son. And he pleads with him to come in and celebrate with the rest of them, but he's not having it. I will not go in there. I will not be part of this celebration. And he explains to his dad not only what the problem with all of this was, but he also reveals the kind of heart that he has personally. Look at verse 29. So he answered and said to his father, Lo, these many years I have been serving you. I never transgressed your commandment at any time. And yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours came, who devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him. He's mad that after all those years of service that he has poured out to his dad, he's never received a return on his investment at all. You never even gave me a goat to celebrate. And he comes home after wasting your livelihood and you're going to kill the fatted calf? I never even received a small party. For all the service I have given to you, I have never received a return on that investment at all. And he wastes your whole livelihood, comes back, and you do this for him. That's my problem. The next statement that his father makes must have been like fingernails on a chalkboard to him. What the father says to the older son here probably crushed him. Look at verse 31. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. I've highlighted the one word on the screen. His father just called him son. But there's a deeper meaning here to this word. The word son has two different meanings in this parable. In the English language, we see the word son and we just define it as one thing, but the Greek goes a little bit deeper here for us. There's two words, both translated the word son, but have two different definitions. When he refers to the younger brother, he calls him huios, which means son or kinsman. That's how we define the word son also. You're related to me, you are my son. But when he calls the older boy son, he uses the word teknon, a totally different word in the Greek, which means little child. So when he refers to the younger son, he says, you are my son. And when he refers to the older son, he changes the wording and he says, little boy, little child. He changes everything. With one word, he delivers a message that would be difficult to hear for a person without a servant's heart. Your younger brother has matured to the point of having a servant's heart, but you still have a lot of growing up to do. Everything just changed. He has matured. You need to grow up. What a huge message to hear as the older brother. I have been faithful to you. I have never left. I have served you all these years and I received no return for that investment. And his dad says, yeah, he went and wasted everything, but he matured through that. You need to grow up. The word's different. Little boy, you have a lot of growing up to do. You need to mature. The younger brother was happy to hold the position of a servant just as long as he could be with his father. As long as I can be with you, I'm happy to be your servant, Dad. I just want to serve. He didn't need to receive a return on his investment. It was more than enough just to be able to serve. I just want to serve. The older brother was upset that he wasn't getting a return on his investment of service that he felt he absolutely deserved. I should be receiving a return on everything I've done for you, Dad. But you're throwing this huge party for somebody who absolutely does not deserve it. He doesn't need to get a return on his investment because he's blown it. But I should receive a return on my investment because I've been faithful all the way through. The older brother was upset that he wasn't getting the return. I'm not getting a return on everything I've done for you. The younger brother showed maturity where the older brother displayed a lack of immaturity. A servant's heart is a true sign of spiritual maturity. And there's a huge difference between serving and having a servant's heart. If you went to work tomorrow and your boss says, by the way, we're not paying you anymore, do you think you'd continue to serve? No. No, I'm going to go find a different person to serve that can give me a return on my investment, because that's a job. You need income. You need to take care of your family. So you're going to switch positions. You're not just going to keep showing up to serve. And that just makes sense. So there is a difference between a servant and a person with a servant's heart. A servant's heart will perform a service even when they get nothing in return. They do it out of the love they have for the recipient. They just do it because they love the one they're doing it for. And there are many times when a person like this will receive, they won't receive even as much as a thank you. But they're still happy to do it. What is it about those people? You know, they hate you. Yeah. Why'd you do that for them? Because it was right to do. I just wanted to be there for them. They're not even going to say thanks. It's okay. I didn't do it for the thanks. I didn't do it to receive something back. And by the way, a thank you is important. Give a thank you. Let people know that you're thankful for what they've done. But a servant's heart will do it even if they don't even receive a thank you. They do it even at the point of no return. Even if they get nothing in return for it, because it was never about that anyway. I didn't do it for that. I did it because I wanted to do it. They're just glad that they got the honor of serving God in whatever capacity it is. They're just happy to serve. But I want to mention the fact that a person with a servant's heart will always receive a return, even if that's not what they do it for. A person with a servant's heart, you are going to get a return for having a servant's heart. Always. It never fails. You will get a return on that investment every single time, because God honors that. Look at Galatians chapter 6 and verse 7. It says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap. God always blesses faithfulness. Always. If you give in the offering plate because you want to serve God, because you want to worship Him and love Him, you will receive a return on that. It may not be financially, but your needs will be met. It may not be in a way that you expected it, but God is going to bless you. He always blesses faithfulness. If you give of your time for somebody, believe me, you are going to get a return, because God says you are going to reap what you sow. God always blesses faithfulness. So even if that's not why you do something, you will receive a return if you have a servant's heart. Something will come back in return. There are many people who give a good effort in serving others, but eventually burn out because the return is not enough. And we know people like that. Maybe we've been there before. I keep giving and giving and giving, and nothing ever comes back. And some people get burnt out. They grow weary in well-doing because there's no return. And there are those who serve in one capacity and feel that they are exempt from serving in some other capacity because they feel like they've fulfilled some kind of requirement. I'm already doing this, so therefore I'm exempt. I don't have to do that. A person with a servant's heart doesn't see things like that. They see a need over here and a need over here, and they fall in both places. They fill the gap. A person with a servant's heart is not as much focused on what they are doing, because they're more focused on who they are doing it for. That's where their heart is. They continue to find ways to serve God because of how grateful they are for everything He's done for them. They find it of the utmost importance to follow in His steps, because He performed the greatest act of service there ever was for them. So they want to do that back for God. I want to serve you, not because I'm going to get a return for it, but because of everything you did for me. I just want to be your servant. Look at what He did for us. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant, and coming in the likeness of men, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. A person with a servant's heart wants to serve God because of the act of service that God did on their behalf. I want to serve you because I'm thankful for what you did for me. And no, I don't need a return on it. I don't need you to do anything for me. I just want to serve you. I just want to serve. A servant's heart is a true sign of spiritual maturity. Naaman could have said, I don't need to humble myself to do anything more than I'm already doing. I don't need to humble myself to that level and do anything more than I'm already doing. But if he would have missed out on all of the blessings. Gehazi made that mistake, and he focused more on the return than on what was right to do. And he exalted himself, and he lost it all. Spiritual maturity is not based on how much Bible knowledge you have. It's not based on how faithful you are in church. It's based on how much you love God and desire to imitate God. And if you want to imitate God, you're going to imitate the person that showed the greatest act of service anybody has ever shown. The largest servant's heart that has ever been seen in all of eternity is the heart of God. So if you want to love him and imitate him, that right there is the true sign of spiritual growth, a servant's heart. And then that becomes why you go to church. That becomes why you put money in the offering plate. That is why you grow in Bible knowledge. Because of that right there. You don't do it because you're trying to serve. You do it because you love him, and that's why you are happy to serve. You do it out of the honor it is for you to serve him. It is my honor to serve you. You do it even at the point of no return. You do it at the point of no return because it's your honor and it is your pleasure to serve him in any way you can. A true sign of spiritual growth, when you go from son to little boy. Why did you change the word? Because there's a message in there for us to hear. The one with the servant's heart has grown in more maturity than the one without the servant's heart. You want spiritual growth? Follow that guy right there. Not the bad decisions, but the good decision that he made to be a servant. That's spiritual maturity. This son has a lot of growing up to do. Well, I already do this, so I don't have to do that. You need to grow. You need to mature. Well, I don't want to do that at all. Why should I have to do that? I'm better than that. You need to grow. You need to mature. My prayer is that our church grows spiritually. And this right here, imitating Jesus Christ, there is no greater way to imitate Jesus Christ than to do it with the heart of Jesus Christ. And that is a servant's heart. When you make decisions in your life, make it from the heart of a servant. What you do in your life, decide to do it from a servant's heart. Pray for that servant's heart. Maybe you don't have it. Maybe you see areas in your life where you think, that doesn't really look like a servant's heart. Well, that's a good one to talk to God about then. That's a good area. Go to God and say, okay, I'm starting to see some holes here, and I need you to fill that with grace so I can show grace in those areas too. And you don't do it because of the return you're going to get on that investment. You do it at the point of no return because of your love for him. Because it is your honor to serve him and to love him. That is the true sign of spiritual growth. And that is my prayer for this church. People that will love and serve at the point of no return. And I promise you, even if you do that, there will be a return because God blesses faithfulness. Stand with me this morning. Dear Heavenly Father, I do thank you